I do think that in 5 years' time, LNG will be flourishing. I think we are at the start of the golden age of LNG. I'm not the only one to say that, because it's getting more affordable, it's getting more available, and it's getting more sustainable.
If you weren't in LNG, what would you be doing?
I could have become a mountain guide, because I like to share passion with people. I like to take people to places. And, as a consultant or negotiator, this is what I do. I take people to places. I take them to Qatar, I take them to Algeria, take them to conferences.
This is the Oil and Gas Breaking By show, where we are going to invite industry leaders to talk about their journeys and also technologies of tomorrow, in an effort to break some of the biases that might have formed around this energy industry. Hello everyone, I hope you are happy and healthy. I'm Anand Jha and you are listening to the Oil and Gas Breaking By show. Today I'm happy and excited because we'll be joined by Jean-Christian Heintz, a global LNG consultant and founder of Wideangle LNG and LNG Now. He's also member of the Gas Tech governing body. With 25 years of experience in strategy, contracts, and trading, John has worked with many leading trading houses, utilities, and energy companies to shape the future of LNG in this energy transition. Outside this energy arena, John is alpinist who has summited 500 peaks across 5 different continents, bringing same speed and precision. That's what he does with the LNG global market. So with that, let's deep dive into his journey and also get his views on the biases that might exist in this energy industry. John, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you for hosting me.
It's great. Like finally we were able to connect. I know you're traveling a lot and finally we are having this conversation. So I'm looking forward to our conversation, especially in these times where everybody is talking about this boom, energy transition. So much is happening in this world. But before we deep dive into this industry itself, we'll start with your journey, which is also very interesting. So one side you have lots of interest in energy, but you are also alpinist and explorer. Everybody knows who knows you, they know your love about mountains.
I dress a little bit like an alpinist today, actually. I was in the mountains today. I summited a small mountain from 9 to 11. That's a nice way to start your Sunday, your Friday, sorry.
Yeah.
I said Sunday because, LNG never sleeps, right? So sometimes I don't remember which day of the week we are. And as a consultant, I can say that you're always on vacation, never on vacation. With LNG, it's really the case. So, well, how did I start and why did I arrive in LNG? Well, I started my energy journey in the 20th century, 1998. And I started applying to EDF-GDF, which at the time had a unique HR department. So I wouldn't know if I would land on the power side or the gas side. And I fell on the gas side of the force, which was pleasant because I prefer gas to power as a product. And so I started as a pipe engineer for safety studies on a compressor station in the north of France. And then I wanted to get a broader vision of the business. So I went to Paris, where I was doing some studies about the whole grid, the gas grid. Quite interestingly, I was in charge of a study what would happen if Russian gas would be cut. And I still have those documents. I still have those documents, and at the time we would say, okay, we'd just bring more LNG. Because at the time it was an integrated structure. So gas, LNG was just like you could touch the buttons. It was only one company doing that. And things have changed with the market liberalization. And then I was quite interested in trading gas. So I went into merchant part of Gaz de France. And after that, I went to LNG. I wanted to speak more languages. I wanted to see beyond Europe. And so that took me to Norway, took me to Trinidad, took me to Chile, to Algeria. And then I was headhunted actually by a company who wanted me to start a desk in Switzerland from scratch. And I said, well, Switzerland, mountains, how can I say no? The challenge was great. Yeah.
A perfect match.
The challenge was great because, I was actually on a big ship and I had to hop from that ship and go on a small kayak. The good thing is when you spend your energy on your kayak, you feel like the kayak is powered by you. Whereas a big ship, you never know exactly your contribution to the ship's speed and direction. But the bad thing when you're on a kayak and the seas are rough, or when you're in a small sailboat and there's no wind, you have to be very patient and you have to be actually very perseverant on the long term to stay in the game.
Yeah. And you talk about this Switzerland journey. I was saying like it's a perfect match. Your interest for energy and the mountains. Like what could have been better?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of stress as a trader. So it's important that after your hard day at work, you find some good balance. And Switzerland is fantastic for that because you can have the worst day at the office in front of your screens, but when you go home, everything works, everything is fine. And even if you have only half an hour, you can enjoy the nature, you can enjoy the landscape. So that's the perfect place to be for me.
And you said you have worked across many different countries. What you find common and what you found different working across different culture and countries?
The common thing is that you need to understand the local culture. So what I usually do when I travel is I find at least half a day to visit, to blend, to talk to local people outside the LNG sphere, ask a taxi driver to take you somewhere. Try to speak the local language because this LNG market is actually very human related. It's still about relationships. This is why we like this market. It's human relationships. It's not only clicking on a screen. You cannot really click on a screen to trade LNG. Some people want to tell you that it's possible. It might be possible, but mostly it's OTC. It's grab your phone, meet people. And so the cultural dimension is fundamental.
That makes sense. And what you found different across these continents and countries?
If you go to the US, it's the belief that the market runs the system, that you will always find gas to feed your LNG plants. And that's arguable. Right now, you see the Henry Hub is actually spiking. So it might be interesting to keep an eye on that. If you go to other countries like the Middle East, it's more like the LNG is actually a national asset. It's taxpayers' money. You go to Norway, it's a bit the same, right? It's something valuable we're sitting on, and it's for the future generations. It's the revenue that we need to care about. So the relationship to us, the asset per se, is different. And then the way to the business, the way to the business is completely different. If you go to Africa, you're going to have different ways of engaging conversations. You will have to be more careful about your etiquette, especially if you're French and you go to Africa. It come after decades of history. You have to be careful. If you go to Asia, it's a bit cliche, but if you go to Asia, it's probably hard to break the ice, but once you have friends there, it's friends for life. So again, it's very much cultural. And this is what I find fascinating, of speaking the languages, understanding the culture. LNG has taken me to places I would never have visited. Trinidad, Qatar. This is not necessarily the place you want to go on vacation. And then when you go, you realize that it's super interesting.
Excellent. Yeah. And this energy has brought all the world together. Either as a producer or as a user. Like if you like, there's so many countries, so many companies, they're part of this long value chain from
Yeah.
production, transportation to using it.
Yes.
So that's great. Any stereotype and bias that you came across or you have seen that exists in this industry?
What do you mean bias?
And maybe towards industry or anything, maybe how they look into towards industry or anything, maybe country to country. If you take example of Europe, they were very much bullish on energy transition. They were going towards
Yeah.
more and more in green energy than oil and gas based energy. So
Yeah. No, from that perspective, I think the global South is teaching us a lot of lessons. First, we as the West need to understand that emissions are something that we need to care about. And I'm on a mission to phase out coal, right? This is one of my reasons to wake up in the morning as an LNG businessman, because LNG is cleaner. LNG is less particles. LNG is less sulfur in the atmosphere. So it's not only about ppm of CO2, if you will, but the global South is also telling us something. A, we can't necessarily afford what you're offering us, and we're not asking for help. We're asking for cooperation. So help us, but in a partnership way. We're not going to drive Teslas overnight in Africa or whatever other electric cars. So this transition has to happen in a partnership way. And the other thing is, we in Africa or in the global South in general, we need to monetize our oil and gas. You can't come and tell us, okay, now we're done with our growth, and you all have to stop using hydrocarbons because it's bad, right? It's like now we took the elevator and you take the stairs. That's unfair. Okay, so the fair transition is the only transition that can be sustained. And to be fair, I think there is a grace period, if I can call it this way, a grace period where LNG, along other hydrocarbons, will have to remain in the picture. Otherwise, we're going to build a fracture. We're going to have a fracture that's even bigger than what it is right now, and the world will never meet the climate target.
yeah, makes sense. And that also reminds me one case in Vietnam where they made some goal to move towards more and more gas-fired energy resources. But when the price went up, they had no choice. They went back to coal. So as you said, like everybody has to play part here.
And we have to be ready to accept some of those moves. India, for instance, has a lot of domestic coal. India can move coal from A to B because they have a lot of railways. Coal can be stored somewhere for months and you can grab it later. LNG is a high-tech product. You have to accept the nature of the commodities. And then if LNG is too expensive, people go back to coal. If a lot of people go to LNG, no one will buy the coal. It will be cheaper. And then someone will suddenly say, hey, you know what? I'm going to take that coal.
Yes.
So the elasticity between all these commodities is something we will have to live with.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. That also brings us to our next question, actually. That's about opportunity and challenges in this oil and gas industry. Lots of things are happening, as we already spoke a little bit about it. But how do you see these challenges and opportunities bringing new ideas for someone who wants to make it big in this energy industry?
Yeah, I'm actually mentoring a lot of people right now. So I see the interest of moving to LNG. People look at this market like a very dynamic, like very promising. Clearly, after a few years of hydrogen bubble, people now are going back to a certain reality check where hydrogen is going to play a role. But hydrogen is a bit like a Swiss knife. You can do anything with a Swiss knife, but maybe the Swiss knife is not the best tool to do all these things.
Yes.
So this reality check is actually bringing back some interest into LNG. We shouldn't be ashamed of being LNG traders or business developers. Back in 2018, 2019, I had the feeling I was working in the tobacco industry, really, and that was over the top, right? So now people are actually understanding, after the crisis we went through, that LNG is a problem solver. And I think anyone who is agile, anyone who has a problem-solving mindset is welcome in this industry. And I would say maybe for young people, it used to be a bit out of fashion because of this bad image of it being a fossil fuel. But I would encourage people to join this industry because the industry has to be changed from within, not by people demonstrating in front of headquarters of Total or Shell. I've seen protesters, and when you want to let them join the debate, they usually can't because they
Yes.
have a software which is protesting. And so I want to tell people to use their intelligence to
Yes.
actually change the industry from within, decarbonizing, optimizing, regional trade rather than going from Peru to Kuwait. Yes, we can do that. We can do better. We have to do better, but we also have to educate the consumers. Because what I hate the most is that the consumer and the voter, which are two hats on the same person, are completely behaving opposite, right? You cannot be a gas consumer during the week and a voter in the weekend that completely contradicts your behavior as a consumer.
Yes.
And there's a lot of education to be done.
Yes.
And I think as an LNG professional, I'm doing a lot of trainings. I'm trying to point out all these paradox behaviors so that people kind of refocus on what we should do.
Makes sense. And I also like the approach that you just mentioned about instead of going on back foot to be defensive, let's have a conversation. I think that
Yeah.
part is missing because I think it goes both ways. Sometimes as an energy professional, you start feeling like you are put in on the corner and then you want to push back really hard. Instead of pushing back, I think it's open conversation is needed to make it work for everyone.
I'm agnostic when it comes to energy. I was on a TGV train in France yesterday, powered by nuclear energy. Nuclear energy is great for trains and for AI, for servers. Solar energy can be great in many places, maybe not in the Alps because people are starting to understand the value of a landscape that comes in the perspective as well. I'm agnostic, so any solution is worth considering. And it's a mix of energies that will lead to the right transition. But I'm also worried about people missing the critical thinking. And in my trainings, I insist a lot on critical thinking. Don't trust the first thing you see on Instagram or the first thing you hear in the news. Even the primetime French TV made enormous mistakes about CO2 emissions, orders of magnitude. And this is why we need to attract people who want to work in this industry and want to share the knowledge to their families, to people in their social networks, so that we actually have a fair image of what the LNG industry can bring to the world.
Make perfect sense. Just continuing this discussion, like if you have to underline maybe one skill or mindset for the professionals, what would be that?
Perseverance, nerve, we see that this market is completely crazy. So you must be ready to weather a lot of storms when it comes to, if you're a trader, you will have positions to hold. If you're an analyst, you will have to rebuild the whole set of assumptions because your map is covering a certain area and then the world is going to be outside that map. So you will need to put a lot of dedication and energy. Innovation, because we all tend to be living on the past decades, and this industry needs to evolve into something that is, more adaptive to smaller economies, for instance, with small-scale LNG, that can be easier to finance. So innovation and diversity in terms of cultures, gender equality is important, is a lot of men, as a matter of fact. Bring diversity with skills and with backgrounds. That's important.
No, that's make perfect sense. That's perfect sense. You've already highlighted many things to think about, but one thing you talk about this always changing environment around energy, changing in atmosphere. So you have to stay long, like it's a long game, and this
Yep.
industry is not going anywhere, but it's transforming itself with different phases, different time, different decades. So that will continue. But that also brings us back to your journey. We talked about where you have started, wherever you are today. But if you're given a chance to reflect back on your journey, what changes you might make?
It's not my style to look back in the mirror and change things. I think I'm the kind of person who has always believed in his intuition. So I have followed people. I have followed my gut feeling about people I want to stay with, people I want to work with. I've always been very open to sharing my knowledge, to sharing my passion. In a trading environment, that's not necessarily what we should do because trading is IP, trading is intellectual property. So your reflex would be more like to keep what you know for yourself. But I think that my way of behaving in this market has actually built a good karma, if you see what I mean. The fact of being very um, altruistic has opened me a lot of opportunities. I have very long relationships, and I can say I'm friends with everyone. And I think it's in this business, it's good. It's good to be in this mindset of be very spontaneous and be very simple, just
Yes.
simple in the way you handle relationships.
And that relationships goes forever. So if you have those
Yeah.
relationship that's built on the trust, that goes forever.
Trust is clearly a key word.
Yeah.
And you followed what happened recently with a few contracts. This LNG industry has been a gentleman's club, and now it's a bit questioned whether the way the industry was working can continue, or is it going to be more a contract way of interacting, let's say? Is it going to be more a less personal, less human? That might be a concern.
So John, that also brings us to rapid fire round. Are you ready?
I am
Okay, let's see. Define LNG market in one word today.
fascinating.
Fascinating. No, that's a great way to put it, especially in the energy industry changing every day and transforming
Yeah.
into new shape and sizes. So there's lot of stuff going on. That's a great way to put it. Next question. Most breathtaking peak you have ever climbed and why?
Mount Etna in Sicily, because it's an active volcano. So we actually damaged some of our gear because of acid fumes.
Mm-hmm.
We realized 2 days later, and we could ski a snow-capped volcano facing the sea, right? And also it was
Oh,
after several attempts because we had to wait. We had to cancel a first trip, and we came back the week after because of weather. It's just like trading, when stars are not aligned and suddenly you actually can put your plan to execution. That was a fantastic experience.
but you didn't give up. That's a good
No,
thing.
no, no. It's on your bucket list, and you want to do it.
That's great. Essential fuel of your day: espresso, green tea, or mountain air?
Okay, espresso is of course something that I cannot do without, but the supercharger is the mountaineering. This morning I had a couple hours where I could escape the desk. I do the miracle morning, so I wake up at 5 or 6, start to work, and then around 8 or 9, I'm like, okay, I got a window. And when you do that and you actually go back to work, it's an incredible feeling.
I can imagine. One misconception about LNG you wish people would drop.
That it's the champagne of fuels. It's it's the nickname that always come to mind. Yes, it is high tech. Yes, it is could be expensive, But we have a fantastic opportunity to make it more popular right now.
Makes sense. And I think we are on that track, especially with the
Yeah.
lots of productions happening around the world.
Yeah.
Yeah. Next one, a song or soundtrack that gets you ready for a big deal or climb.
When I want to do a deal and I want to be in a war machine mode, there's a song called Temple of Love by Sisters of Mercy.
Okay.
But it all depends on what kind of work you need to do, spreadsheet or drafting a document. But yeah, it can be rock and roll. So you have to get a lot of rock and roll tunes to go along.
to get you going.
Yeah.
Interesting. If you weren't in LNG, what would you be doing?
I could have become a mountain guide, you know,
So you
because
love mountain.
I like to share passion with people. I like to take people to places. And as a consultant or negotiator, this is what I do. I take people to places. I take them to Qatar, I take them to Algeria, take them to conferences. Actually, when you think about it, a mountain guide and a consultant are a bit the same. As a consultant, I'm telling my customers, you can go this way. Don't worry. You can trust that. You are afraid, but you shouldn't. And on the same day, I could as well tell them, so here, you want to go there, you think it's safe, but it's not. So that's very similar between guiding someone on a mountain and guiding someone along an LNG trade or negotiation.
Oh, makes sense. And that's why you love both of them.
Yeah,
They look different, but they're same.
there's a lot of parallels between the two, to be honest.
Yes, yes. That's great. That also brings us to conclusion of our conversation. But before we sign off, if somebody is listening this conversation after 5 years, what one thing you want to remember or to pick from all this conversation?
I hope we will be right in our assumptions on the energy transition, but I do think that in 5 years' time, LNG will be flourishing. I think we are at the start of the golden age of LNG. I'm not the only one to say that because it's getting more affordable, it's getting more available, and it's getting more sustainable. This is exactly the trilemma that we need to achieve. So in 5 years' time, I think I hope at least that people will realize that it's a fantastic fuel. It is not standing it's not standing in the way of the energy transition. On the contrary, this is what I like people to remind.
We already spoke about multiple bias from diversity to how people approach to this market. But you have to underline one bias, what that would be, and how can we come over it?
So you mean something that we would need to
Yes. Address,
Okay.
yes. Yes.
Right. Well, maybe to believe that this industry is just the continuation of what it has been so far. I think we have to embrace change. It's true that this industry, you cannot close your eyes on where we come from, because those who ignore the past are condemned to repeat it.
Yes.
So we need to understand the legacy of this LNG market. But we also need to understand that there are new generations of people, and we're going to hand over to those people. People who were not even born when I started in this industry are the traders of today or the traders of tomorrow. And it's very important that they make LNG live and strive in today's environment, in the way the world is working today.
That's great reminder. So with that, we will close off our conversation. But before I sign off, John, anything to add here?
I mean, it's been a very nice conversation, very inspiring. Looking forward to watch the podcast actually. And what I like is it's actually questioning your presence in this business. It's questioning my presence in this business. After 20 years, I must say I'm still pretty much passionate about it. So I hope I will remain passionate for the years to come.
You will be, John. Like as I said, you love this industry and you have lots of insights to share. I think that passion will continue. With that, I will sign off for today. Keep listening. Oil and Gas Breaking By Show. See you next week. Thank you.
Thank you very much.